we are looking at an option, a possible option for the replacement of the state fuel tax. Yeah. But I do have a presentation tonight. I'll open it up with a 90-second video. It'll kind of give some history, some context about why we're doing this.
Roads are pretty important. They connect us with our jobs, our ohana, our friends, our homes on these beautiful islands. But roads wear down over time due to general use, vegetation, and the occasional disaster courtesy of Mother Nature. It takes hard work and money to connect us. Right now, a large part of road repair and maintenance is funded through the gas tax. Each time you fill up your tank, you're helping to fund better public roads for Hawaii. Perfect, right? Well, not exactly. Hawaii is on a renewable energy mission. If we achieve our environmental sustainability goals, we should be running pretty close to 100% clean energy by 2045. That means more efficient, alternatively fueled vehicles will be on the roads, and that's great. But what will happen to the roads? Because the way transportation tax is set up now, Hawaii won't have its largest source of funding to fix or maintain our roads if no one's pumping gas. We aren't the only ones facing this issue. Other states have tested a pay-for-what-you-use system where miles are reported and drivers chip in for roads according to how much they drive. This idea may work for Hawaii, but we want to be sure because the way it works elsewhere may not be right for our state. So here's where you come in. We need your thoughts. We want to come together for a community discussion about it. Let's rethink our transportation funding and figure out what could work for Hawaii's future. Because our roads are what keep us connected, and that's what really matters.
So if you're asking, well, why are we here tonight? We haven't really done much. We want to get off on the right foot so that we can ask questions. We can present information. You can ask questions, and then based on your questions, we want to make it so that this study we do is relevant to everyone. Yeah, it's to everybody, and then in the end result of all this is that we'll have a report that will contain recommendations. So all the questions, input, things that we get, it'll form a basis for our recommendation that goes to the legislative bodies. It could be at the state level, county level, and then that's something that we would recommend, from our DOT admin. Yeah. Now, how do we pay for our roadways? And for us, we're state highways, so as far as how state highways get our revenue, on the bottom we have a vehicle weight tax. So if you were to look in the state law, there is a weight tax. It has different tiers of weight, and the heavier a vehicle are, it gets bumped into whatever tier that you fall into. Vehicle registration, so every time you pay a registration, $45 of that comes to state highways. And like for me, when I had to rent a car in Hilo, I got a car, $3 a day from the rental car goes to state highways. And that green part is what we're here to talk about tonight. So every time you go to the pump, 16 cents per gallon of gasoline, or if you're using diesel, 16 cents per gallon come to the state highway fund. So as far as the green portion of the pie, as of last year, we got about $83 million, yeah, as far as the fuel tax. And again, this project is to look at a study, an option for a replacement, yeah. So as far as replacing that green portion of the pie with this road usage charge, a distance-based type of mileage fee. Right now, when you buy gas at the pump, you get a receipt. So if I bought 10 gallons at that price, you would get a receipt for $37.80. What's not shown on the receipt is the fuel tax here. And like I mentioned, there's 3 levels. County level on the top is 19 cents per gallon for County of Hawaii. We have 16 cents per gallon for the state and 18.4 for the federal. So if you subtract those 3 middle numbers, the bottom number is what is the cost of the petroleum, the refining, the delivery, all that stuff. Yeah. What this graph is showing is that As time goes on, the fuel efficiency for vehicle is increasing, especially in the area of passenger vehicles and light-duty trucks. So that green line you see, you know, from 2012 and as you go towards the right, as time goes on, it is increasing. So if I bought a F-150 today as compared to 10 years ago, you know, I think the mileage, the MPG will be higher, yeah? And even now when you look at those trucks, they get aluminum frames and all that, so things are changing. Because of the fuel efficiency, the increase, what's happening is that the overall amount of fossil fuel, gasoline, when you look at all the vehicles, it's starting to decrease. And because the tax is based on the number of gallons, you know, a person buy, the direct result is that we have less gas tax collection. So that's what the red line represents. So when we looked at numbers, it was actually increasing as far as the amount of gasoline tax we're collecting. It kind of leveled off in 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018 it has started to drop. Yeah, it's like I mentioned, it's about $83 million now. If you fast forward to today, what we did was since then, we applied for a federal grant. We're lucky to get federal money, and that's how we're paying for this project. Yeah, so we want to look at the option of replacing the state fuel tax with a mileage-based charge.
We wanted to come out into the community and give as much input at the beginning of the process so that that could inform how we design the research going forward. For the research, our premise is that it would be a replacement, so no driver would pay both. And today the gas tax is 16 cents per gallon, and the average vehicle gets 22 miles per gallon. And if you do the math, that works out to about 3/4 of a penny per mile. So if you think about it, the gas tax is already a kind of mileage tax. The fuel in your car, you pay the tax on it, and as you drive, you burn the fuel, tax-paid fuel, and it works out to about 3/4 of a penny per mile for the average vehicle that's already being collected for your use of the roads. So how much would it cost? Well, the average statewide mileage driven per year is about 10,000 miles, but we didn't think that number would work here on the Big Island. I think you drive more here on average. So if you take a 22 mile per gallon car and drive it 15,000 miles, today you're paying $109 in state gas tax. So for our research, we're going to assume that that vehicle, instead of paying $109 in gas tax, would pay $109 in road usage charge at 3/4 of a penny per mile, which means the net difference is zero. So the impact for the average vehicle financially would be nothing. But not every vehicle is typical, so what about some vehicles that are not typical? Like this car. This is a Nissan Leaf. It's electric. It doesn't use any gas. So if you drive a Leaf 15,000 miles, today you're paying $0 in gas tax. So in our research, we'll assume that under a road usage charge, this car driven 15,000 miles would pay $109, which means obviously that would be $109 more than they're paying today, since they're not paying gas tax today. For a hybrid car like a Toyota Prius, they use less gas than the average car, but they do use some. So they pay about $60 in state gas tax to drive 15,000 miles. Under a road usage charge, again, it would be the same. Paying the same amount to drive 15,000 miles as the electric car, $109, which is $49 more than they're paying today in gas tax. What about a pickup truck like a Ford F-150? In this example, 17 miles per gallon, this vehicle is paying $141 in state gas tax to drive 15,000 miles. Well, if we're paying the same per mile, it would now pay $109, which is actually a decrease of $32. So everybody's paying the same under a road usage charge for driving the same distance. But you might wonder, why would we want to give a break to these vehicles down here when they're using more fuel? Well, that makes sense. Why would you do that? But this project is not about what the vehicle fleet looks like today, which is more like this. This project is about what the vehicle fleet's going to look like in the future. And there's more and more vehicles up there that are driving on electric power and hybrid engines, and fewer vehicles of this type that are burning more fuel to drive. So 8 other states have studied this and pilot tested it. Sorry, I should get out of the way so you guys can see. Oregon was the first state to actually enact a per mile road usage charge in 2013, and the program started in 2015 at 1.5 cents per mile, which was the equivalent rate of their state gas tax. In Oregon, it started out as a voluntary program for up to 5,000 drivers who could opt in to pay a per mile fee instead of paying the state gas tax. And since then, the legislature has expanded that program to allow more vehicles to come in. Specifically, electric and hybrid vehicles can opt into the program and avoid paying a flat registration fee. Utah is the second state to enact a similar program. Starting on January 1st, 2020, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and electric cars in Utah will either have to pay an enhanced registration fee, since they're not paying gas tax, or they can choose to pay based on how many miles they drive, so that they can contribute to the roads just like the gasoline-burning cars do. So what are we doing here in Hawaii? We're starting out with research, and here we are at the beginning of this 3-year effort where the car is at the inception of the project. There are 2 main phases of the project. The first one is called the driving report phase. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But we're going to be sending out statements to folks in the mail, so many of you will probably get one. And all it will be is an informational flyer that explains how a road usage charge would impact your vehicle in your personal situation. And we want to invite folks to respond to that with answering the survey and providing your questions and reaction to what that statement says. That will be based on odometer readings that are taken at safety check. But in the second phase, we want to offer an opportunity to test drive other ways of reporting mileage besides the safety check odometer reading, which include using smartphone applications, to use a smartphone if you have one as a mileage measuring device. You can snap a picture of the odometer and send that in periodically as the basis of mileage reporting. There's some newer vehicles that have computers already built in that can already report the mileage driven, so you don't have to do anything except enable that feature. So we want to try those out and invite up to 2,000 volunteers from around the state to experience these new technologies, new ways of interacting with your vehicle to report mileage, and tell us what you think of these other more technologically advanced ways of doing it. Then at the end, we'll evaluate all of the feedback we get and prepare a report of recommendations for the administration to consider forwarding to the legislature. So what's next? As I mentioned, later this year, many folks will start receiving a statement in the mail. So you go to safety check, they ensure that your car is fit to drive. They also capture your odometer reading and note it. So what we'll be doing is taking that odometer reading, comparing it to your previous safety check, and preparing a statement that shows you how many miles you drove, how much you would owe in a theoretical road usage charge, and how it compares to the state gas tax that you would have paid for driving those miles. And then there will be a survey attached where we would like folks to go and fill out the questionnaire and provide answers to questions about what you thought of that method of having your mileage reported and fee collected. So when you get that statement in the mail, please do not try to pay it. We will not collect any money. We'll not
Those
accept
checks
your
out to Donald Smith on the Big Island.
So just one of the things we wanted to convey today is to be ready to receive this later this year, starting in the fall. So it's an informational piece of research, and we're really interested in having folks react to that because it's a customized statement that actually conveys to you what your personal impact would be. So we want to understand your reaction to that.
So Travis, you would only get one of those though if you signed up as a...
No, everyone who has a safety check
will get one. Okay.
Will get one.
Right.
Not everyone. There are some edge cases that we won't have the sophisticated database system ready to filter out. But most folks will get one.
Okay.
What about fleets?
Sorry?
What about fleets?
Fleets of light vehicles will get statements. We're working with a few fleets to work out on what basis light vehicle fleets would get them, because they don't inspect all their vehicles at once. They do it on a rolling basis. So we want to understand what's the best way for fleets to get this information. But it would just be the light duty fleets, passenger cars and pickups. So the second phase, so we're inviting volunteers now in the second phase, up to 2,000 statewide, to test out these new technologies that I described earlier, like smartphone applications, in-vehicle computers are already built into many new cars. And one that's not pictured is a device that you can plug into any car built after 1996. And all it does is it counts the miles, and it reports it just over the cellular signal, just like your phone would. And then the project team would prepare a periodic invoice, basically. Again, not to pay. There's no real money being transacted in this project. So that you could react and tell us how you experienced the technology approaches for reporting mileage. So we're looking for up to 2,000. If you're interested in being a volunteer, Jing is taking signups tonight. One of the reasons many folks in this community we thought would be interested, particularly in this part of the test, is a lot of off-road driving, a lot of ranching. Today, if you drive your vehicle off-road or on your private property, guess what? You're paying gas tax for those miles that you've driven off-road. Under this approach, if you opt in for technology that can tell where you're driving, those miles could be exempted. So you wouldn't pay for driving on your own property. You wouldn't pay for driving off-road. You would only pay for the miles that you drove on public roads in the state. Now that requires a trade-off of allowing a technology company to see where you drove so that we could properly calculate which miles you owed for. But that trade-off does allow you to understand the savings that you could get from only paying for driving on public roads instead of paying for all miles, which is the case under the safety check approach. So a lot of questions, I'm sure you have many. We look forward to answering as many as we can, although as Scott said, we don't have all the answers because we're just at the beginning. So we're hoping that this research project will be a richer opportunity for you to experience how a system could work. There's a lot of details to be worked out, and a lot of choices to be made. So we'll have to make some choices for the pilot test. And that's where your input today comes in. We have to make some choices now so we can design an experiment, collect your feedback. And then at the end of the project, report back what we learned and which options would be more preferable in a real system someday in the future when the gas tax no longer is. So we've been around the state to, well, every island now. So just some examples of the themes that we've heard coming from some of the earlier meetings. Our first meeting was in Kapolei, West Oahu. A lot of folks there are concerned. They're long-distance commuters. They drive a long way into town. Lower-income community, they're concerned about how paying per mile would impact them financially because they perceive to have a long distance, large annual mileage consumption, so they're worried about what the impact would be. On Kauai, a lot of concern about impacts of tourists like me, who drive around and beat up their roads and clog their roads, and they want to make sure that any road funding system properly captures what the impacts are from visitors. So that was a feature that we need to be careful and attuned to in how we design the test. And then in Maui, a lot of folks on the slide about comparing electric vehicles to hybrids to pickup trucks, folks in Maui were concerned about, well, what would that do to the incentive to buy an electric car? If now all of a sudden, instead of paying nothing in gas tax, an electric car is paying $100 a year to use the roads based on how many miles they drive, will that impact consumers' preferences about which type of car they buy? So we want to understand what kind of impacts this approach would have on vehicle adoption.
We pay about 53.4 cents per gallon, which is spread federal's 18.4, states 16, counties 19. And as I understand from the presentation that you've made tonight, we're really focused on the 16 cents that we're paying to the state. What happens with the federal and the county?
This study is for the possible replacement of the state fuel tax, looking at the option. Now, as far as whether if the county wants to do it, the state cannot speak for the county, but we have invited them as partners into the project, and as far as to what degree they want to participate, it's their decision, But say in the future, if the county elects not to do anything, then theoretically there could be a county gas tax, a state road usage charge possibly, and then at the federal level, the federal government, they are also interested in this because they do also see the trend, and that's why they offer monies like to us, the states, so we can do research like that, and at the same time they do get the benefit of getting all our data from our project too,
Our family is a Kenworth truck dealer, so we went in February to the national dealers meeting. And there's a lot of facts about electric cars and how it's being presented that in your plan is in 48, right?
45.
45, no more gas cars. That's what you presented, right?
Well, as far as it's
No, but that's
yeah.
what you stated. That's a fact. That's what your study's going to be based on. That's what you're presenting to the public. That the state's goal by 2045, these type vehicles, no gas tax. So one of the interesting things about being a dealer is Toyota Car Company was the first company to do hybrids, partnered with PACCAR, who makes Kenworth trucks, and they want to do hybrids in large vehicles. Well, the total U.S. market of electric hybrid cars, do you know the percentage?
You mean as far as
Total
percentage of
percentage,
fleet?
U.S.
It's less than 10% of new sales.
So in 25 years, total cars on the road, electric or hybrid, 2%.
On the road.
2%.
Right.
So, and guess how long they've been doing this? Do you have the answer?
About, how long
25
does it
years.
take?
So you're saying that in 25 years, for 2%, you're gonna now jump, all of a sudden, the technology has jumped that, I don't know where you're getting the technology, maybe the state's just gonna mandate that car dealers are no longer gonna sell gas combustion engines, but it's not gonna happen because technology hasn't caught up. So I came and I notified guys because I'm confused that, hey, we're gonna start moving towards a per mile tax, and it comes on the premise, and it's good what you're saying, hey, we're replacing it, we're gonna equalize it. That's how it starts. But you're not gonna be, there is no way in 25 years you're gonna replace the combustion engine. You can maybe give tax credits and incentives to people to buy electric vehicles, but even with everything they've done to date, it's 2%. So I'm curious, in 25 years, till today, it's 2%, and now almost the same time frame, 25 years, you guys came up and you're saying, hey, we're gonna have no tax basis. You know, so it's real confusing because the statement has to be apples to apples. If it's 2% over 25 years, what do you guys know that Toyota Motor Company and several other manufacturers don't know that's in the next 25 years gonna get rid of it? You know, and then just one last thing, not to pick on our state highway system. There's a lot of things state highways can do that can reduce their cost of operations. We build federal roads on this island in less time than they can put out Queen K and finish it. In addition to that, and I'm not picking on state highways, but just a point. And just one last thing, and I really gotta run, because it's confusing to me, is I don't know why the state highways buys little dump trucks or vehicles when, you know, if they bought a regular dump truck, instead of hiring 6 employees and buying 6 trucks, little trucks to carry stuff, they buy a regular dump truck and they get 3 employees and maybe pay 30% more on the vehicle, but it's more efficient.
My main question really is, if you replace one tax, the current gasoline tax, with the road usage tax, it's perfectly great for EV. There's no tax for EV. There should be one. I drive an EV, I should pay. No question about it. That's great. But what you do for gasoline cars is you suddenly incentivize people to drive in gasolines. There's no penalty anymore for driving around 3,500 to go get a 6-pack at a grocery store rather than walking there or driving your bicycle or something. You're basically no longer making any. That's a very important one currently made by gasoline tax, which is that the more you consume, the more you pay. Not just the more you drive, both. Now understand that you're concerned about the roads and their maintenance, and somebody else is concerned about pollution. But we should all be working towards this 2045 goal, right? And coming up with something that's actually going to be a counter incentive for efficiency in cars, actually, making the guy driving his Cadillac Escalade the same tax as the guy driving his Prius. This is not a good idea. And so it's easier, wouldn't it be just easier to raise the gas tax while having a road tax for vehicles that don't use gasoline, like EV cars? That seems to me they make more sense, especially if the assumption, which I think is the correct one, that by 2045 we hope there would be no combustion engine left on the island. And that, for those of you who might doubt this, the Tesla Model 3 is actually now the best-seller car in most of Europe. And they just started getting it a month ago. I think it can happen. It's 25 years. It's a long time in technology. And if this is really happening, then why don't we just do a road usage tax for the EVs and leave the gasoline tax alone? Or maybe erase it.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. Yes, we'll be sure to note down your comment. Yeah.
The basic premise in the miles per gallon that you have worked out might apply to Oahu, which is mostly where you're getting. This is all Oahu centric. You've got to understand this. Your basic premise for the cost of a gallon of gasoline is ridiculous. I would love to pay $3.78 a gallon here. Who paid that little for gas here? Who went to Costco? What did you pay last time at Costco? And what's the difference between Costco gas and Waimea gas? About $1 a gallon. Okay? Everybody here knows it. We all stop up and fill down at Costco while we're down in Kona. You got to. You got to save 20 bucks a tank. Okay? So your numbers are way off, which means we're paying more in taxes. We're paying more per mile, disproportionately compared to the rest of the state. So the formulation for what you're trying to work in making it equal doesn't work equally here on the Big Island. You've got to adapt it. The numbers just don't match up right.